great to see so many faces that I recognize and the new ones that I've met today. So I'm going to talk a little about Chris, 4 or 5 minutes. I could be here for half an hour, as you all know. I love to talk, but this is Chris's day. So, but I want to start by saying a couple of things about school board that you may or may not know. And the first one will be sort of a question for the crowd, okay? So when I started on the school board 6 years ago, does anybody know what one of the most pervasive gaps in the district was? I will bet anything that no one's going to get this right, even the board members, because they're not going to give the answer. Anybody? No.
No DCs?
It was a lack of position control, okay? A lack of position control in the district. We weren't tracking the roles in the district as compared to just tracking the people who were hired. And as it turns out, position control is like one of the most important things you can have in a large organization that has thousands of employees and serves tens of thousands of people. Because if you're not tracking roles, you don't really have a framework for how you're implementing the board's direction, how you're making sure that the service you're offering is getting to the people who need it. The second one is something you will all know the answer to. In the last 6 years, what is the event that has had the most impact on our schools and our world?
COVID.
And the reason I talk about these two things is because when I'm thinking about who is going to make the best board member, I'm thinking about their ability to deal with two categories of situations. The things that you'll never hear about and the things that you'll never predict. Because neither position control nor COVID, believe it or not, came up in my first election in 2018. And there are a lot of issues that people talk about in the election, and there are a lot of issues that Chris is really strong on, and he's going to talk about them. But when I look at who I want sitting next to me on the dais, I'm thinking about how is this person going to deal with the thing that you all don't know about, either because it's maybe so boring that it doesn't make it outside the district, or because it happens in closed session and we can't talk about it. Those are things that tend to have some of the biggest impacts on our kids and families, and you'll never hear about them. And the kinds of things you'll never be able to predict. So it's really, really important for a board member to be a systems thinker, right? To be able to think about the organization of the school district as a system and not as one thing that is, that is really driven by different policies. Because we have so many different schools, we have so many different families, we have so many different employees. We are dealing with so much on so many different fronts, whether it's compliance, budgeting, staffing. And being a systems thinker is being able to bring that all together and look at the big picture. And as it turns out, Chris is a systems thinker. In fact, that's his domain expertise. And I know this because last night I binge watched his YouTube channel and learned a lot about distributed systems. More than I ever cared to know, but I found it to be extremely, extremely enlightening because most of it, to me, was a one-to-one transferable skill to running the district as a board member. Thinking about the district as a sum of its parts, thinking about how all these parts are integrated, and how when you leverage one part, it's going to affect so many different. So if we're talking about equity, if we're talking about academic excellence, all these things involve so many different pieces of the district, so many different people, so many different sites who are going to be doing things differently. How do you look at the big picture and make sure you're pushing forward on this policy direction in an effective way? Chris can do that because even though he's never been a board member, he knows all about systems. That's super important. The other side of the coin, though, is you can't just be a systems thinker, right? You need to understand, deeply understand, how these kinds of policies that you are going to effect are going to have an impact on the people who are actually impacted, right? How is your governance going to affect the people you serve? Chris, by the way, has been a substitute teacher in every school in our district. And I don't even know if anybody here other than the board members can list every school in our district. But Chris has been in them. That is amazing, by the way. He's got kids in the school. He's been in PTA leadership. He's got exactly the attributes and the experience that one needs to be a board member. And again, as I look at who's going to be on the board with me for the next 2 years, and then who's going to be taking over that mantle for the 6 years after that, I want people who are going to be able to handle whatever the world is going to throw at them, that we can't predict, who's going to be able to handle the kinds of things that we're going to have to deal with behind closed doors, and who's going to be able to make the decisions that are going to have the right and the best impact on our kids, because they understand what our students and our families need. And that's Chris. So I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over, but Chris Colohan, everyone.